They descend not with banners, but with silence. No oaths of moment, no roaring cries of vengeance. Just a thunderous advance, brutal and inexorable, as if the Emperor himself whispered death in their ears. The Minotaurs are not here to save. They are not here to inspire. They come to end things. When they are deployed, it means someone within the Imperium has outlived their usefulness, or worse, become inconvenient. And if that someone happens to wear ceramite and call themselves Adeptus Astartes, so be it. The Minotaurs will do what they were made to do: kill space marines. Among the myriad chapters of the Imperium, all shrouded in myth and murder, few inspire the hushed, fearful respect reserved for the Minotaurs. It is not because of their triumphs over aliens or their zeal in defending humanity. No, it is because when the Minotaurs arrive, it is not the enemy who trembles. It is their kin. There is something deeply wrong, disturbingly efficient and coldly mechanical about how the Minotaurs wage war. Their silence screams volumes. Their lack of honor rituals, of brotherhood bonding, of post-battle reverence. It's all a whisper of a terrifying truth. Perhaps they were never meant to be warriors of the Emperor in the first place, but rather weapons designed to be turned inward. Tools to destroy other Astartes. Instruments of punishment, of surgical eradication. Perhaps they were never meant to be anything else. The official histories say little. The Apocrypha of Scaros, the Codices Astartes, even the obscure librarium files of the Administratum, all are strangely hesitant, oddly evasive when it comes to the origins of the Minotaurs. No great crusade heralded their birth. No parade of genetic lineage connects them to a known primarch. The records do not show them in the thick of the Horus heresy, nor in the tumultuous scouring. In fact, it is not until much later, suspiciously later, that they suddenly appear, already fully formed, already armed to the teeth, already fanatically loyal to the High Lords of Terra. The Minotaurs seem to erupt from the shadows during the era following the Second Founding, but without the ceremony or genetic declaration that typically accompanies the rise of a new chapter. It is as if they were simply deployed. Many whisper they are a product of the cursed 21st Founding, the so-called Cursed Founding, a time when the Adeptus Mechanicus and the gene labs of Terra dabbled in reckless experimentation, seeking to enhance the Space Marines beyond their limits. Many of those chapters were abominations, some mutated beyond recovery, others descended into madness or heresy. The Minotaurs, however, did not falter. They did not rise to glory either. They simply endured, too perfect to fail, too strange to trust. Their genetic lineage is unknown, some suspect Iron Warriors, others the World Eaters. But the silence surrounding their origin, the bureaucratic fog that obscures their foundation, suggests something even more sinister. A manufactured lineage, a cover story for something darker. Why would the Imperium keep their genesis hidden? Why would a chapter be designed and then unleashed without brothers, without a crusade, without a clear purpose save for the will of the High Lords? The answer may lie in what they are used for. Unlike other chapters, the Minotaurs are not assigned to long wars of attrition. They are not garrisoned or deployed to protect key strategic worlds. Instead, they are sent in as purifiers against Imperial targets. Rebellious governors, heretical cults, rogue inquisitors, and more than once, entire Astartes chapters who dared question their orders. If the Minotaurs were ever born for war, it was war within the Imperium. Their fealty is not to the Emperor, not in the traditional sense. Their allegiance lies with the High Lords of Terra. Not one individual, but the institution itself. A political machine that views loyalty as function, obedience as currency, and Astartes as tools rather than sons of a god. The Minotaurs reflect that vision perfectly. They do not seek glory. They do not preach the Emperor's name. They do not build shrines or chant oaths. They follow orders, and they execute those orders with unflinching brutality. There is a growing belief among historians and heretics alike that the Minotaurs were never truly a chapter in the traditional sense. They may have been created as part of a shadow project, by the Senatorum Imperialis, a kind of internal countermeasure against wayward chapters, an anti-Astartes force, not traitors, not heretics, but executioners. Perhaps their gene seed is not even tied to a Primarch. Perhaps it was synthesized, blended from multiple sources, or artificially stabilized through means lost to time or hidden by decree. When they appear, there is no celebration. There is only dread. Other chapters avoid them. Even Inquisitors are wary of their presence. The Minotaurs do not parley. They do not warn. They arrive, dismantle, and depart. And when the dust settles, so too does the fog of memory and accountability. Records are sealed. Reports are redacted. And the Minotaurs return to the shadows from which they came, their origin story once again buried under the weight of imperial necessity and bureaucratic silence. In this, perhaps, lies the true horror. Not that they were created, but that they were created with full understanding of what they would be. Not heroes, not saviors, but hammers to crush the Imperium's own when they stray too far from the leash. The Minotaurs are not lost sons seeking purpose. They are blades honed to cut away rot. And in a galaxy devouring itself from within, they are the scalpel wielded by hands that dare not show themselves. The Minotaurs do not wage war. They dismantle resistance with mechanical precision. Their combat doctrine is not built on the ideals of valor or the pursuit of heroic moments. It is a cold calculus of suppression, overwhelming force, and targeted annihilation. They do not spread out to control territory or entrench to defend it. They push forward like a steel tide, unrelenting, unmerciful, and utterly uninterested in anything but the destruction of their designated enemy. Their entire martial philosophy revolves around the concept of overwhelming shock assault, blitzkrieg not only in movement, but in atmosphere. Every action is calculated to induce terror, confusion, and collapse before a single shot is fired, whereas other chapters often favor finesse or adapt to the battlefield's chaos. The Minotaurs impose their own logic upon it. They arrive in the largest force possible, deploying entire companies en masse rather than tactical squads. This is not inefficient. It is intentional. The sheer scale of their arrival is itself a weapon. It breaks morale before the first engagement. It signals to the enemy that resistance will not only be crushed, but remembered only in ash. This is the beginning and end of their purpose, to force capitulation through force of presence, then enforce annihilation through unyielding violence. Their use of heavily armored terminators in large numbers, often out of proportion to their supposed chapter size, hints at unusual logistical support. It allows them to form near impenetrable wedges in enemy lines, using shock and awe to disrupt formations before cutting them apart in close combat. Their vehicles, land raiders, vindicators, and dreadnoughts, are not held in reserve. They lead the charge, entire spearheads of mechanized doom, rolling forward behind walls of flame and shrapnel, daring anything to withstand the crush of ceramite and adamantium. In urban environments, the Minotaurs excel, not because they finesse their way through alleyways, but because they do not hesitate to bring the entire structure down if it impedes progress. They use explosives liberally, not for tactical advantage, but as a message. Nothing will stop their advance. Not walls, not civilians, not history. They reduce resistance not just physically, but symbolically. Entire cities have been leveled not because they had to be, but because the Minotaurs were sent to send a message, not negotiate outcomes. What makes their doctrine so uniquely terrifying, though, is its absolute inflexibility. The Minotaurs do not adapt to enemy behavior. They do not adjust strategy based on terrain. They do not pivot once engaged. Instead, they grind forward in a doctrinal march of blood and fire, confident that their sheer mass, resilience, and relentlessness will shatter all opposition before adaptation becomes necessary. And disturbingly, they are usually correct. Their doctrine is not clever. It is not beautiful, but it is brutally effective, especially against other space marines who are trained to expect at least some logic, some honor, some rhythm to warfare. The Minotaurs offer none. Other chapters often describe combat as an art, Blood Angels with their grace, Raven Guard with their subtlety, Ultramarines with their codex discipline. The Minotaurs see it as execution. There is no poetry in what they do, only function. They employ no specialists beyond what is absolutely necessary. Librarians are rare. Chaplains are nearly absent. Apothecaries follow, but not to heal, only to reclaim gene seed. Even their tech marines function more like logistical officers than spiritual mechanists. Their battle doctrine is not made for glory, but for absolute dominance. What this reveals is chilling. Their tactics are perfectly tuned to one scenario above all others, engaging and destroying other Astartes. Their frontal assaults neutralize elite firepower. Their saturation bombing negates cover. Their massed armor formations overrun entrenched positions. This is not the way you fight orcs, who swarm, or Eldar, who vanish. This is how you kill your own kind. This is how you fight those who know your every move, who share your strength, your tenacity, your legacy. The Minotaur's combat doctrine is a blueprint for betrayal. It is a manual for controlled fratricide. There are no heroes among the Minotaurs because there is no room for them. Their doctrine allows no deviation, no personal valor, no singular glory, just the crushing certainty of coordinated sanctioned slaughter. And in this, perhaps, lies their truest doctrine, not just in how they fight, but in what they erase in the process. Identity, resistance, and any illusion that the Imperium still cherishes its champions. They were not sent to hold a line. They were not dispatched to drive back Xenos invaders or purge demonic incursions. When the Minotaurs move, it is often under veiled orders, targeting those once considered brothers. Loyalist chapters, if deemed uncooperative or politically inconvenient, have felt the crushing force of the Minotaur's wrath. And the Imperium does not record these events in glory. It buries them in silence. But the echoes remain. Battlefields left stripped of banners, strongholds razed to rubble, gene seed harvested and stored without ceremony. These are not the victories of crusaders. They are the butcher's tally of sanctioned fratricide. One of the most unsettling examples is the Minotaur's confrontation with the Astral Claws during the Badab War. The Astral Claws, under Luft Huron, had declared secession from the Imperium. It was rebellion, certainly, but the response was telling. Rather than a council or a strike from the Inquisition alone, the Minotaurs were unleashed, and their war against the Astral Claws was not just swift, it was personal. They tore through the defenses of the Maelstrom Zone with a focus that defied strategic necessity. Entire star fortresses were boarded and reduced. Allied chapters operating near the Maelstrom reported seeing Minotaurs deploy in full chapter strength, without notice, without support. And when the fighting was done, the Minotaurs did not linger. They vanished, leaving the remains of Huron's dreams in blood-soaked ruin. But perhaps more disturbing are the quieter, less publicized operations. Whispers abound of their involvement in the decimation of the Sons of Medusa Enclave in Segmentum Obscurus, supposedly over ideological disputes regarding the worship of the Omnissiah. The evidence is fragmentary, deliberately so. Vox records lost, witnesses reassigned or executed. But forensic adepts uncovered wreckage patterns consistent with Minotaur assault doctrines, rapid orbital insertion, saturation bombardment, then direct entry via siege rams and cyclone pattern dropships. No Xenos presence was detected, only the bodies of fellow Astartes. Another tale, spoken of in hushed tones within the Death Watch, tells of the Minotaur's intervention in a schism within the Steel Confessors chapter. What began as a doctrinal dispute with their Mechanicus patrons escalated into rebellion. But before the conflict could even be assessed, the Minotaurs arrived. Within a week, the chapter's fortress monastery was reduced to a cratered ruin, and all surviving gene seed was collected by unknown agents. Not a single Minotaur casualty was officially recorded. The Mechanicus made no complaint. The matter was considered closed. What sets these conflicts apart is the utter finality with which the Minotaurs prosecute them. They do not capture. They do not detain. There are no trials, no inquiries, no attempts at redemption. When the Minotaurs are sent against Astartes, it is with one objective: extinction, and they excel at it. Their tactics, wargear, and psychological conditioning are all optimized for fighting opponents with the same training and resilience they themselves possess. They know the weaknesses of a fortress monastery. They know how to read the doctrine of another chapter and unravel it in hours. And they do it not with malice, but with dispassionate efficacy. There is a bitter irony here. In the days of the Great Crusade, brotherhood between Astartes was unbreakable, even sacred. Now, 10,000 years later, the Imperium has become so bloated, so fractured, that it has bred killers to deal with its own champions. And those killers wear the same armor, bear the same gene-forged might, and yet operate with none of the bonds of loyalty or fraternity. When the Minotaurs come for another chapter, they do not come as judgment. They come as execution. This reality has left a stain on their name that even the Imperium cannot scrub away. Other chapters avoid them. Some actively loathe them. The Salamanders, in particular, have refused to work alongside them since the Minotaurs allegedly executed a relief force of scythes of the Emperor who refused to yield their authority during a joint operation. The details are classified, but the scars remain, in how the Minotaurs fight alone, how no honors are shared, no banners exchanged. They are the unclaimed sons of the Imperium, and they are sent to silence its own. What is perhaps most chilling is that they do not question it. They do not hesitate. There is no grief, no remorse, no crisis of conscience. Because perhaps, deep down, they know they were built for this. And so they carry out their grim charge, not with pride, but with the efficient detachment of a scalpel severing rot from living flesh. And if that rot happens to bleed like a brother, so be it. Every weapon speaks intent. In the case of the Minotaurs, their wargear is a brutal lexicon of a single purpose: kill space marines, not suppress rebellion, not wage protracted sieges, not scour alien infestations. Their armory is purpose-built to annihilate post-human warriors. Their tools reflect a level of planning far beyond standard codex application. Each piece of equipment, each tactical adaptation, reveals an unsettling level of precision, suggesting not only foreknowledge of Astartes' capabilities, but an obsession with overcoming them. Take their signature boarding shields, for instance, massive slabs of reinforced ceramite, nearly immovable when locked in formation. These are not defensive implements in the traditional sense. They are offensive barricades, meant to withstand bolter fire at point-blank range while advancing inexorably through narrow corridors. Designed not to protect, but to facilitate lethal proximity. Perfect for storming the hallways of another chapter's fortress monastery, pressing relentlessly into sanctified chambers, and ending the lives of brothers who once shared the same gene-forged purpose. Then there are their combi weapons, often modified beyond regulation. Plasma Melta hybrids, volatile and temperamental, but capable of breaching Terminator armor in a single shot. These are not loadouts for massed engagements or suppression of hordes. They are duelists' weapons, crafted for elite kill teams targeting high-value individuals, company captains, chaplains, apothecaries. The chain of command is surgically targeted, severed in the opening moments of engagement, not because it's strategic, but because it is ritual. A brutal message. You are not soldiers, you are executions. Their dreadnoughts are another anomaly. Unlike many chapters that revere their dreadnoughts as honored ancestors or sacred reliquaries, the Minotaurs treat them like reusable weapons. Deployed in trios or greater, their pattern configurations emphasize shock and containment, more akin to battering rams than defenders. Siege pattern variants dominate their armor columns, each customized for breaking strongholds, rupturing armor plating, or delivering thermal charges at close range. In confined quarters, these ironclads are monsters, not guardians, not brothers, tools. Even their power armor bears peculiar modifications. Reports have surfaced of adaptive plating, enhanced kinetic dampeners, and non-standard helm visors, elements suggestive of purpose-built upgrades for fighting Space Marine-level opponents. There is less emphasis on long-term sustainability and more on short-term dominance. Their suits are not meant to campaign. They are meant to kill fast and leave only the dead behind. Psychological warfare plays a role too. The Minotaurs do not communicate with enemies. They do not issue warnings or engage in ritualized dueling. But they do display trophies, helms taken from fallen foes, scorched chapter banners hung from their vehicles, flayed purity seals desecrated and discarded. This isn't pride, it is theater. They know Space Marines are more than soldiers, they are symbols. By desecrating those symbols, the Minotaurs destabilize morale, seed doubt, and stoke the fires of fear within even the most hardened Astartes. Their deployment tactics mirror this. Rapid strike from orbit, but not from stealth. Instead, they arrive with excessive force, multiple Thunderhawks in tight formation, drop pods saturating the LZ, orbital bombardment timed not for destruction, but for psychological destabilization. They want the target chapter to see them coming, to feel the dread. They know fear is not a natural response among Astartes, but it can be engineered, especially when the enemy knows that what is coming isn't a Xenos tide or a traitor horde, but kin wielding the same gene-wrought strength, repurposed into silent annihilation. Their command structure reinforces this chilling clarity. Units move with unison that borders on the inhuman. No Astartes chapter, not even the Ultramarines, maintains such synchronized cohesion under fire. Vox silence is observed even during heavy conflict. Orders are relayed via coded gestures and pre-mission briefings, so detailed they remove the need for real-time direction. This is not just discipline, this is programming. It is what allows them to function with terrifying speed in environments meant to kill their kind. Even the way they harvest gene seed is telling. They do not leave apothecaries to conduct ritual extractions. Instead, specialized teams move in as the battle concludes, equipped with surgical tools and containment units. The process is quick, efficient, and utterly devoid of reverence. The dead are not honored. They are assets, resources. Their gene seed is cataloged, boxed, and removed. No oaths are spoken, no rites performed. All of this adds up to a disturbing truth. The Minotaur's tools are not designed for glory, defense, or tradition. They are built for cold internal warfare, for identifying, overwhelming, and erasing other Astartes. Every bolt shell, every blade stroke, every thunderous advance is a message. You were never invincible. You were never untouchable. You are what we were made to end. The fortress monastery of the Minotaurs, known only as the Labyrinth, is a name whispered rather than spoken. Few outside the chapter have seen it and lived to tell the tale. Its location is not registered in Imperial star charts. No records mark its construction. But those who have encountered fragments of their inner world describe something deeply unsettling. A realm of endless corridors, mirrored halls, and silence so complete it drowns thought. The Labyrinth is not a place of prayer or meditation. It is a crucible of indoctrination, a forge for minds not merely disciplined, but reshaped. Within this silent bastion, there is no chapter cult as seen in more traditional Astartes legions. No communal rites, no stories of a beloved Primarch, no spiritual bonding through shared mythos. The Minotaurs do not sing the Emperor's name. They do not recount the legends of ancient campaigns. Instead, they are drilled endlessly in formation tactics, breach protocols, and kill patterns. Their sermons are battle simulations. Their liturgies are deconstruction of enemy doctrine. If they worship anything, it is the purity of execution. Each recruit is isolated from the moment they arrive, not merely separated from others, but denied even the comfort of familiarity. No names are retained. No memories of their past lives are honored. They are assigned designations, numerical, impersonal, disposable. This is not mere discipline. It is the systematic dismantling of identity. Astartes are typically forged by pain, yes, but the Minotaurs are forged by erasure. The individual is scrubbed out, leaving only the function. This indoctrination is reinforced through constant psychological reinforcement. Rumors speak of neural conditioning implants, not uncommon among the Astartes, but in the Minotaurs, these may go further, used not just for pain suppression or reaction speed, but for emotional regulation. Fear, doubt, hesitation, even pride, all potentially muted to facilitate unflinching obedience. The Minotaurs do not act out of loyalty. They act out of programming so deep it mimics faith. A perverse kind of devotion, not to the Emperor, but to the act of domination itself. Their command structure reflects this impersonal brutality. There are no captains in the traditional sense, no celebrated heroes whose deeds are sung by the chapter. Leadership is functional. Ranks are temporary, based on task efficiency. Even their supposed chapter master, Asterion Moloc, does not command through charisma or legacy. He is obeyed because to disobey him is unthinkable, not because of love, because of design. Within the Labyrinth, aspirants are tested not for valor, but for submission. Loyalty is not measured by oath, but by how quickly and cleanly they can kill a designated enemy, even when that enemy wears the same armor. Trials do not reward the strongest or the fastest. They reward the most efficient, the most cold, the most detached. Those who show empathy or hesitation vanish. No records are kept. No judgments are announced. They are simply removed and their designation reassigned. Even their battle records reflect this. Minotaur logs are impersonal. Engagements are listed not by commanders or heroes, but by operational codes and success metrics. The number of enemy Astartes neutralized, the duration of resistance before collapse, the volume of gene seed reclaimed. There is no mention of brotherhood, no notes of valorous deeds, only results. This culture of silence extends to how they interact with the Imperium. Other chapters hold conclaves, send emissaries, share intelligence. The Minotaurs do none of this. They receive orders through encrypted channels few can trace. They do not attend summits or aid diplomacy. When they finish a campaign, they do not debrief. They vanish, returning to their shadowy redoubt where the Labyrinth swallows all light and memory. It is easy to see how such a system might be horrifying to traditional Astartes. The warrior monks of the Imperium are supposed to be brothers. They are meant to be sons of their gene father, bound by shared purpose and sacred duty. But the Minotaurs are something else. They are not brothers. They are instruments. And the Labyrinth is not a home. It is a forge of faceless weapons. There is a growing theory among the more radical members of the Inquisition that the Labyrinth is not simply a training facility, but a perpetual psychological conditioning engine. That even veteran Minotaurs, after every campaign, return to be recalibrated, reinforced, adjusted, their memories reshaped if needed, that their personality is not something they own, but something rented for the mission. When you speak to a Minotaur, you do not meet a warrior. You meet a role, one that will be discarded and rewritten as necessary. In this light, the Minotaur's terrifying cohesion and lack of humanity makes sense. They are not bound by faith or history. They are unified by programming, by indoctrination so complete that even death holds no defiance. They are not the Emperor's angels. They are the Labyrinth's echoes. Asterion Moloc is not a man. He is a myth wrapped in ceramite, a monster given orders, a living executioner whose name conjures dread even among the unflinching warriors of the Adeptus Astartes. No one knows where he came from. No records exist of his induction into the chapter. There is no documentation of his rise through the ranks, because the Minotaurs have no ranks in the traditional sense. He simply exists. He leads, and he kills. With unrelenting consistency, Moloc has commanded the Minotaurs across centuries, possibly millennia, without sign of aging, injury, or psychological degradation. Some whisper that he is not even alive in the traditional sense, that Asterion Moloc is a title, not a name, passed between hosts or manufactured anew when needed. But there is continuity in his cruelty. Asterion Moloc is a commander who does not tolerate failure, not in his enemies, not in his own. He has been witnessed executing his warriors mid-battle for perceived hesitation, not out of rage, but calculation, to remove weakness from the field like one would flick away a cracked gear from a sacred engine. He does not inspire, he commands, and those who follow do so because anything less than obedience invites obliteration. His wargear is as iconic as it is terrifying. The Regent of Fire wears customized Terminator armor, its surface blackened and scarred from countless engagements, adorned with brutalist iconography that mocks the heraldry of other chapters. Upon his shoulders, mounted trophies, helms, skulls, and torn banners of fallen Astartes serve not as decoration but as psychological warfare. His primary weapon, the Labyrinth, a colossal axe forged not just for battle but for execution, has cleaved through relic armor, tank plating, even the shielding of Contemptor dreadnoughts. It is not a duelist's weapon. It is a verdict delivered with terminal finality. Some within the Ordo Hereticus believe Moloc is a perpetual, a rare and nearly mythical being who cannot truly die. Others suggest he is a clone, perhaps one of many, grown and conditioned to serve as the face and fist of the Minotaur's doctrine. More disturbingly, there are theories that he is a homunculus, an amalgam of flesh and machine, rebuilt endlessly in the bowels of the Labyrinth after each engagement, his personality downloaded and rewritten into new shells. Whatever the truth, the result is the same, a being immune to fear, devoid of remorse, and perfected for slaughter. Yet what makes Moloc truly monstrous is not just his physical might, but his mind. He understands the tactics and psychology of Astartes on an almost preternatural level. In every campaign, his strategies unfold like labyrinthine puzzles, convoluted, deceptive, and designed to mislead even the most disciplined commanders. He does not just crush opposition. He draws them into traps of pride, of certainty, of tradition, then raises them when they cling to those illusions. He weaponizes expectation. He turns doctrine into bait. There is one consistent trait in the rare fragments of communication attributed to Moloc: contempt. Not for the enemy, Moloc does not hate, but for weakness, for hesitation, for those who still cling to hope, brotherhood, and the illusion of honor. He views the galaxy as it is, a corpse feeding upon itself, and sees in the Minotaurs a purity of purpose others lack. He does not believe in the Emperor as god or father. He believes in the Imperium as machine, and he is its unfeeling gear. Other chapter masters shun him. Some openly refuse to meet with him, even during coordinated engagements. And yet he holds a position of unchecked authority. His orders come not from segmentum commands or even the Lords Militant. They come from Terra itself, via encrypted signals, silent gestures, or agents who never give names. There are whispers he has access to chambers even inquisitors are denied, that he has stood in the presence of the Senatorum Imperialis and received their mandate without question, not as a servant, but as a weapon accepted by necessity. To serve under Moloc is to surrender identity. His warriors do not follow him because they admire him. They follow because he is inevitable. A storm given shape, a predator bred in shadow, and they become extensions of his will, faceless, voiceless, remorseless. He does not need loyalty. He demands function. And in this, he becomes more than just a leader. He becomes the embodiment of the Minotaurs themselves. There is a final whispered rumor, spoken only among the oldest tech marines and the most blasphemous scribes, that Asterion Moloc is not the Minotaur's chapter master, but its primogenitor. That he was not created to lead the Minotaurs, but that the Minotaurs were created to serve him. If that is true, then what walks among the stars in Moloc's armor is not a man, not even a superhuman, but a demiurge of death, sculpted from the worst necessities of the Imperium. A black mirror held up to everything the Emperor once dreamed and shattered by necessity into the grim present. Among the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, there burns a holy fire. Some call it zeal, others faith, others still name it glory. Whether it is the rage of the Black Templars, the artistic devotion of the Blood Angels, or the cold pride of the Ultramarines, most Space Marines fight with something more than duty. They fight for belief, for legacy, for a future shaped by their victories. But the Minotaurs are a void where that fire should be. They do not crusade, they do not chant, they do not raise statues or carry relics. They are a blade without a hilt, meant only to cut, never to be held. Where other chapters display elaborate iconography, the Minotaurs wear armor stripped of heraldic warmth. Their chapter symbol, a stylized bull's head, is devoid of the usual litanies or battle honors. No scrolls hang from their pauldrons, no purity seals flutter in the wind. There are no personal badges of honor, no company insignias proudly displayed. Each warrior is a unit, not a legend. This is not humility. This is denial. Denial of identity, of legacy, of the human need to believe in something greater than the mission. And what is the Minotaur's mission? It is never declared. They are not a crusading chapter like the Black Templars, or even a defensive bulwark like the Imperial Fists. They do not spread the Emperor's light, nor do they guard the Imperium's borders. They arrive without fanfare, complete their objective, usually involving the neutralization of other Imperial forces, and disappear. There is no lingering to rebuild, no garrisoning, no assumption of responsibility. The Minotaurs do not hold ground. They cleanse it. Even in their choice of enemies, this lack of ideology shows. The Minotaurs rarely engage Xenos unless specifically commanded. They do not pursue demonic threats unless they intersect with their mission parameters. There is no holy war in their hearts, no crusade against the heretic. There is only the target, defined, marked, and removed. This absence of wider context makes them terrifying. A sword that knows not why it swings, only that it must. Their lack of spiritual infrastructure is perhaps the most damning evidence of their function over faith existence. Most chapters maintain librarians, chaplains, and reclusiarchs, not just as battlefield roles, but as keepers of history and belief. The librarian communes with the warp, the chaplain maintains morale and spiritual purity, the reclusiarch preserves the chapter's myths. The Minotaurs have none of these in any visible number. If librarians exist within their ranks, they are silent. If chaplains walk among them, they do not preach. If records of past battles are kept, they are not for inspiration. They are for replication, pattern, effectiveness. Some scholars argue this reflects a post-faith philosophy, that the Minotaurs have been designed or shaped to operate in a galaxy where belief has failed, where the Emperor's divinity is a political tool, not a truth. In this light, the Minotaurs are not heretics. They are post-ideological, the ultimate atheists of the Adeptus Astartes. They fight not for humanity or righteousness or vengeance, but because someone gave them a task. And when that task is done, they await the next. Their warriors show no camaraderie in the field, no battle cries, no victory rites. After a kill, a Minotaur does not raise a fist or chant a name. He moves on to the next target. They are like ants, efficient, purposeful, and disturbingly silent. Their apathy is not passive. It is cultivated, ritualistically imposed. Every aspect of their culture, from training to armament, is built to remove distraction. Faith is a distraction. Glory is a distraction. Even hate is a distraction. Only function remains. This lack of crusading zeal means they do not form alliances. They have no storied bonds with the ecclesiarchy, no favored worlds that they defend out of tradition. Even when they fight beside other Imperial forces, there is no integration. The Minotaurs maintain operational independence with a level of disdain that borders on contempt. They share no supplies, offer no coordination, and treat all others, even other Astartes, with distant indifference. There is no cooperation, only parallel destruction. And yet, their loyalty is never questioned, because they do not need faith to be loyal. They do not need belief to obey. The Minotaurs have been honed beyond such things. They are not inspired, they are directed. And that is what makes them truly horrifying to their more traditional cousins. Not their strength, not their efficiency, but the emptiness at their core. The realization that they are what all Astartes could become, if stripped of spirit and left with nothing but the will of those who rule from the shadows. In the Minotaurs, the Imperium has created a new breed of loyalty, not born of love or fear or honor, but of pure, mindless obedience. A loyalty that asks no questions, that expects no reward. And in doing so, it may have lost the very soul that made the Astartes human to begin with. There is a theory, blasphemous, terrifying, and yet disturbingly plausible, that the Minotaurs are not true space marines at all. That what walks beneath their bronze armor is not the product of gene seed, not the child of a primarch, not even the flawed echo of ancient heroes. Instead, they may be something else entirely. Constructs, golems, charnel puppets made of flesh, bone, and steel, animated not by honor or legacy, but by programming and purpose. To understand this theory, one must look at the abnormalities. The Minotaur's genetic lineage is completely untraceable. No primarch has claimed them. No other chapter has identified them as successor or kin. Their gene stock is not listed in the registries of Mars or Terra. Attempts by Inquisitors and Tech Marines to examine recovered gene seed have ended in silence, redaction, or unexplained deaths. This is not simply secrecy. This is active obfuscation, an effort so intense it suggests the truth is more than politically sensitive. It is an existential threat to the narrative of the Adeptus Astartes. Some speculate that the Minotaurs were the result of a lost or hidden gene-craft initiative, perhaps from the days of the Cursed Founding, or even older. A bioweapon project, sanctioned by the darkest corners of the Senatorum Imperialis, meant to replicate the efficacy of the Astartes without their moral baggage. A chapter without free will. Warriors without bloodlines. Killers born not in sacrifice, but in vats. Evidence lies in their physiological anomalies. Minotaur Marines have shown resilience far beyond standard Astartes parameters. Reports speak of warriors fighting on after losing limbs, organs, even entire sections of armor. Their pain thresholds are unnaturally high. Their metabolic stability in harsh environments surpasses even those of salamanders or iron hands. And when dissected, rare though that is, some tech adepts have recorded internal configurations more in line with biologically augmented servitors than true Astartes. Artificially reinforced vertebrae, implanted override nodes, non-standard cortical mapping. There are rumors of psychic dampening nodes within their craniums, devices designed not to enhance psychic resistance, but to suppress emotional processing. In other chapters, the mind of a Marine is sacred, trained, shaped, but never mechanized. In the Minotaurs, the mind seems optimized for function, emotional flattening, tactical prioritization, zero deviation. This is not the mind of a warrior. This is the architecture of a tool. And then there are the whispers about their regeneration cycles, that between campaigns, Minotaurs do not simply rest and rearm, they return to the Labyrinth to be repaired. That their bodies are subjected to mechanical reinforcement, biosurgical reconditioning, perhaps even neural memory overriding. If this is true, it would explain their consistency across centuries, why their demeanor never changes, why their tactics remain eerily perfect without evolution or degradation. Because they are reset. This leads to the most horrifying possibility of all, that the Minotaurs are not an army of soldiers, but a stockpile of clones. Or worse, a semi-organic databank of manufactured warriors, each designed to last only as long as needed before being recycled, re-sleeved, or replaced. Their apothecarian exists not to preserve life, but to maintain stock. Their tech marines not to repair wargear, but to service flesh units. In this vision, the Minotaurs are not brothers. They are inventory. Such a concept is not without precedent. The ancient project known as the Thunder Warriors, the Proto-Astartes of the Unification Wars, were similarly brutal, short-lived, and expendable. Some believe the Minotaurs are a perfected return to that ideology, not the sons of the Emperor, but the descendants of Malcador's hidden experiments. Not heroes, but solutions, weapons designed to be forgotten once used. There is no record of individual Minotaurs seeking personal redemption, vengeance, or honor. No tales of personal heroism, no known defections, no documented crises of faith. Either they are utterly obedient to a degree no Astartes should be, or they are incapable of deviation. That is not loyalty, that is programming. And still they persist. Still they serve. Still they arrive where the Imperium wishes its sins erased, its secrets buried, and its enemies silenced. Whether they are clones, constructs, or corrupted Astartes twisted into facsimiles of obedience, the effect is the same. The Minotaurs are not an echo of the Emperor's dream. They are the nightmare of his necessity. And if they are not true space marines, then perhaps it is not they who have fallen, but the vision of what a space marine was meant to be. There is a strange echo between the Minotaurs and the Alpha Legion, two forces that should, by all logic, be at opposite ends of the spectrum. One serves chaos through deception and fragmentation. The other supposedly serves the Imperium with unwavering brutality. Yet when one examines the methods, the structure, and the cold efficiency of both, the parallels become too stark to dismiss. It is as though the Minotaurs are not a contradiction to the Alpha Legion, but their mirror, an answer forged in steel and silence to a question asked in shadow and lies. The Alpha Legion is notorious for its layered schemes, its war by subversion, its belief in destabilizing systems from within. They excel at infiltration, sabotage, and psychological warfare. What is terrifying is that the Minotaurs, though overt in their violence, exhibit an eerily similar tactical approach. They destabilize not through rumor and deception, but through calculated morale-shattering brutality. Their presence alone often unravels the unity of enemy forces. Their sudden arrival in overwhelming numbers, often unannounced and unauthorized, creates chaos not just among the enemy, but among allies. The battlefield becomes uncertain, command structures falter, and trust evaporates. Just like the Alpha Legion, the Minotaurs erode cohesion, only they do it with iron instead of whispers. Consider also their lack of personal identity. Alpha Legion operatives are infamous for having no stable name or face. Every soldier could be Alpharius. Their strength lies in the dissolution of self. The Minotaurs reflect this in terrifying clarity. No names, no histories, no heroes. Each warrior is faceless, functionally interchangeable, stripped of anything that might suggest individual value. 1,000 warriors acting with one will. It is the same ideological architecture, but in the Minotaurs, it is weaponized loyalty rather than heretical autonomy. Both operate outside traditional Imperial channels. The Alpha Legion works behind enemy lines, their actions deniable, often invisible. The Minotaurs operate in plain sight, yet answer only to shadowy edicts from Terra itself. Orders arrive encrypted, untraceable, often outside the authority of local command. Like the Alpha Legion, their missions are not explained. Their targets are not justified. They appear, execute, and vanish. And those who question their presence are reminded, quietly, forcefully, that some battles are not meant to be understood. There is even a theory whispered in the Ordo Xenos that the Minotaurs were not designed as a chapter to counter external threats, but specifically to oppose the Alpha Legion. Their lack of spiritual infrastructure, their indifference to the ecclesiarchy, their ability to operate in confusion and with autonomous directives, all make them uniquely resistant to Alpha Legion tactics. Subversion means little to a warrior with no identity. Propaganda cannot mislead an army that does not question. The Alpha Legion thrives on exploiting trust and personality. The Minotaurs possess neither. But what if the connection is deeper still? Some radical historians suggest the Minotaurs are not merely a counterforce to the Alpha Legion, but a product of the same design philosophy. That perhaps, long ago, some element of the Imperium, or even remnants of the Alpha Legion itself, created the Minotaurs as an internal safeguard, a perfected legion stripped of rebellion, devoid of ego, immune to corruption because they lack desire. They are not susceptible to chaos because they have nothing to offer it. No soul, no ambition, only function. There are even rumors of gene seed experiments involving recovered Alpha Legion stock, genetically scrubbed and reconditioned to remove all traces of autonomy. In this theory, the Minotaurs are what the Alpha Legion would be if they had remained loyal, silent, strategic, emotionless executioners, deployed not to enlighten or deceive, but to cleanse. It is a chilling vision, that the Minotaurs are the ultimate tragedy of the Alpha Legion's fall, not their enemy, but their unholy potential realized in loyalist colors. And if this is true, it begs a question more disturbing than any other. Does the Imperium know this? Do the High Lords of Terra understand what they have made? Or are the Minotaurs a weapon so far removed from humanity, so deeply rooted in theoretical counter-rebellion, that even those who wield them have lost sight of what they are? Either way, the mirror remains. Alpha and Minotaur, shadow and steel, two reflections of the same monstrous need to control, to destroy, to reshape the galaxy from within. Among the Imperium's many shadows, none cast as long or as intricate a silhouette as the Inquisition. For centuries, it has been the hand that shapes policy through silence, the eye that watches even the angels of death. And when the Minotaurs appear, unannounced, uncoordinated, and operating with absolute autonomy, the natural assumption is that they serve the Inquisition. But this assumption, while comforting to some, may be dangerously naive. Because there are signs that the Minotaurs answer to no Inquisitor, no Ordo, not even to the triumvirate of power at the heart of the Ecclesiarchy. Instead, they may serve something older, deeper, and infinitely more terrifying, the Senatorum Imperialis itself, or an entity so deeply embedded within Terra's darkest corridors that even the Inquisition steps lightly around its edicts. Let us begin with the theory most often whispered in the more conventional circles, that the Minotaurs are the Inquisition's pet executioners. Their precision, their lack of ideology, their cold detachment, all traits the Inquisition prizes in tools meant for internal purges. The Ordo Hereticus needs silence, finality, and plausible deniability. The Ordo Malleus, when dealing with corruption among Astartes, cannot afford political fallout. The Minotaurs, brutal yet loyal, offer the perfect solution. They are never listed in official engagements. They leave no demands, no claims, just silence and rubble. It makes sense until one considers the deeper layers. For all their terrifying reach, Inquisitors are still individuals. They possess agendas, rivalries, and beliefs. They operate in decentralized cells, and yet the Minotaurs exhibit a level of coordination and resource access that even the most powerful inquisitorial lords would struggle to maintain. They arrive in full chapter strength without logistical delay. They deploy Wargear in quantities that defy their supposed resources. Their starships bear transponders that bypass Imperial naval scrutiny. Even the Adeptus Mechanicus, who scrutinize every deviation from Martian orthodoxy, has not dared question the Minotaur's armory configurations. That is not the work of a patron inquisitor. That is institutional protection. This points to another possibility, that the Minotaurs are a creature of the Senatorum Imperialis, not the individuals who sit upon its gilded thrones, but the bureaucratic gestalt that governs the Imperium. The High Lords are not a single mind. They are a collective of factions, ancient power blocks that compete and collaborate in cycles of influence. Within that storm of politics exists mechanisms too old to name, emergency provisions, contingency forces, and shadow programs born in the ashes of the heresy. The Minotaurs may be one such program. Not a chapter in the true sense, but a weaponized failsafe. A force authorized to act when the wheels of the Imperium threaten to grind to a halt. If this is true, then the Inquisition does not control the Minotaurs. It tolerates them, fears them, perhaps even uses them when objectives align. But when the Minotaurs act, they do so because something far above the Inquisition allows it. A directive not from an Ordo, but from the very fabric of the High Lord's machinery. This explains their immunity to censure, their detachment from the ecclesiarchy, and their ability to erase imperial assets without consequence. There is a third, more esoteric theory, that the Minotaurs serve the Custodes, or more precisely, the entities that operate behind the golden shields of the Emperor. Not the warriors themselves, who would find the Minotaurs abhorrent, but the hidden cadre of ancient officials, the Sigillites' heirs, and the silent orders of Terra's internal guardians. These are forces rarely spoken of, who ensure that the Emperor's will is not merely worshipped, but enacted. In this vision, the Minotaurs are the scalpel within the palace walls, a force to be used when even the Inquisition cannot be trusted. Supporting this theory is the complete absence of Minotaur political engagement. They do not negotiate, they do not scheme, they do not seek favor or influence. Their only agenda is execution. This is not the behavior of an asset vying for power. It is the behavior of a tool, one that knows it will be stored until needed, then unsheathed without ceremony. And then there is the horror behind all of this, that no one truly commands the Minotaurs, not in the way command is traditionally understood, that they are a lingering ghost from the darkest moments of the Imperium's history, activated by protocols so ancient they are no longer even questioned, that somewhere deep within the databanks of the Sigillites' legacy, a switch exists. Flip it, and the Minotaurs move, target, erase, reset, not because someone wants it, but because the machine demands it. Whether they serve the Inquisition, the High Lords, or some deeper algorithm of imperial will, one truth remains. The Minotaurs are not part of the Imperium's vision. They are its correction. And corrections do not apologize. They do not explain. They erase, and they move on. There is a sorrow in how the Imperium treats its champions, but none more profound than in the story of the Minotaurs. For the Adeptus Astartes, though created as weapons, have always carried the trappings of nobility. They are venerated, feared, and in some corners of the galaxy, even loved. Their stories are sung, their deeds carved into walls of cathedrals and whispered by children dreaming of salvation. But the Minotaurs have none of this. No one builds shrines to them. No pilgrims wear their colors. They are not legends. They are not martyrs. They are reminders of what happens when duty is stripped of honor and loyalty becomes a weapon pointed inward. Even their presence brings unease. When Minotaurs are deployed, the reaction among fellow Imperials is never relief. It is dread, because their arrival signals that something within the Imperium is considered unclean, a failure so deep that it must be excised, not reformed, not judged, but destroyed. That is the Minotaur's role. They are not the heroes who save the day. They are the unspoken acknowledgement that sometimes the Imperium chooses to eat its own. Other chapters understand this, even if they do not speak it aloud. The bonds between Astartes are forged in the crucible of shared creation, sons of the same emperor, heirs to the same struggle. Yet the Minotaurs are treated as pariahs. Invitations to council are quietly withheld. Joint operations are avoided when possible. Honors are not shared. It is not because the Minotaurs are traitors. It is because their existence makes traitor hunting all too real. Because to acknowledge the Minotaurs is to admit that even the angels of death can fall, and worse, that the Imperium is prepared to kill them when they do. What makes it worse is that the Minotaurs never ask for trust. They do not speak of redemption. They do not attempt to connect, to prove themselves, to forge bonds of fraternity. They simply execute. They land, they kill, they collect, and they vanish. And when they do speak, If they ever do, it is through orders, not conversation. Directives, not diplomacy. Their silence is not the silence of meditation. It is the silence of something not built to be understood. In this, they embody the Imperium's own hypocrisy. The Emperor's vision was broken long ago, replaced by bureaucracy, stagnation, and paranoia. The Imperium no longer builds saints, it builds corrections. And the Minotaurs are its purest correction, faceless, loveless, necessary. In another age, they would have been condemned. Now, they are tolerated. Because in a galaxy where chaos breeds within the very walls of Terra, sometimes the only response is to unleash something more terrifying than the disease itself. Yet one must ask, what is the cost of this? What does it do to the soul of an empire to craft executioners who have no names? What does it say about humanity's future when it chooses to breed weapons that cannot dream, cannot hope, and cannot be remembered? The Minotaurs do not seek statues, but that does not mean they deserve to be forgotten. Every blow they strike may save the Imperium, but every campaign they end erases a part of it. The tragedy is that no one will ever mourn them. When a Minotaur dies, no tales are told, no records are read. His remains are recycled. His deeds, if recorded, are filed under operational success metrics. There is no grave, no candle, only the next replacement. It is a death beyond death, a fading into function so complete that even oblivion offers no peace. In this, the Minotaurs represent the Imperium's ultimate betrayal of its own ideals. Not because they are monsters, but because they were made to be monsters. Because someone, somewhere, looked at the dream of the Great Crusade, at the heroism of the Primarchs and said, "That is no longer useful. What we need now is fear, control, silence." And so, the Minotaurs will keep fighting. They will keep erasing, and they will keep being erased, not because they chose this path, but because the Imperium did. And perhaps the only thing more tragic than their existence is how necessary they have become. They are not remembered. They are not celebrated. They do not have songs or statues or sagas. And yet, the Minotaurs endure, marching ever forward through fire and darkness, bound not by brotherhood or belief, but by purpose. In the endless war that is the Imperium, perhaps there must be such weapons. Blades turned not against the alien, not against the traitor, but against those who were once called kin. Perhaps in this era of rot and ruin, there must be monsters to keep the greater monster alive. But in the Minotaurs, we see not just a reflection of imperial necessity. We see the price of it. Every brother they kill, every chapter they erase, every piece of history they consign to fire and silence. That is the true face of the Imperium's survival. A realm that demands blood not just from its enemies, but from its own veins. That raises warriors without pasts, without futures, and sends them into the abyss without ever granting them the dignity of knowing why. It is easy to hate them, easy to call them butchers, shadows, weapons wielded by unseen hands. But in doing so, we risk forgetting the real horror, that they were made this way, not corrupted by chaos, not driven mad by ambition, but shaped, crafted, refined into the tools of silence and judgment. The Minotaurs are not the failure of the Astartes ideal. They are its final form, stripped of illusion. The sword with no hilt, no sheath, no wielder, only edge. And so, when they come, when their ships darken the sky and their thunder echoes through the bones of ancient strongholds, we must not ask who they fight. We must ask why they were sent, because the Minotaurs never choose their war. They are summoned to end it, to erase whatever the Imperium has decided it can no longer afford to acknowledge. They are the blade within the flesh of the Imperium, the silence that follows the scream, the executioner whose name is never recorded. And in their every action, they pose a single terrifying question. When survival is all that remains, what price will the Imperium pay to maintain it? Thank you for watching. If you value the deeper truths and unsung tragedies of the Warhammer universe, Subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts below, and stay with us as we journey through the darkest corners of the 41st millennium. Honor the stories no one else will tell.